family. This is Lady Wisdom with Decisions. Do you ever really think about the decisions that you're about to make? Do you ever really think about the consequences of those decisions? I used to tell my students all the time, when you make a choice, when you make a decision, you instantly inherit the consequence of that choice or decision, be it positive, negative, known, or an unknown consequence. Think about that the next time you make a decision. This is Lady Wisdom. Make sure you stay connected with my journey with Paula G across all platforms. And until next time, greatest conversation you will ever have is the one that what takes place in between your ears. What are you speaking to yourself? Welcome to my journey with Paula G, where we are juggling this journey called life while we're walking in the gifts and the talents God has given us. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time, we welcome you. For those of you who are returning, all of my journey embracers, thank you so much for tuning in. We also want to give a shout out because we appreciate those who are supporting this show through their underwriting support. We thank our underwriters so much. They provide the means upon which we can have this programming on a variety of platforms. So we are grateful. And if you're looking to gain exposure for your business, for your product or service, you can email jerryroycelive@gmail.com or Paula at paulagvoice.com. That's Jerry, JERRYROYCE, live, LIVE, at gmail.com or Paula at paulagvoice.com. Put underwriting opportunities in the subject line, so we'll be sure to follow up. Also, make sure you like, you share, you subscribe. I am Paula G Voice across all social media platforms. My website is where you can find me, Paula G Voice. My books, my television, my radio, my modeling, my voiceover, all of the different ways that I'm utilizing the gifts and talents that God has given me. And hopefully, it will encourage you to utilize your gifts and your talents as well. We want to give a shout out to our producer, Jerry Royce Live. Make sure you check out theweekendchannel.tv. All right, well, today I want to talk to you about the twins. I call them the twins. The twins called stress and anxiety. And we've been hearing a lot about these twins in this season of our lives. And I can't put a number on it if it's been the last however many years it's been, but we've heard more and more about stress and anxiety, how people are stressed out, how they're anxious, people are having panic attacks. They've been dealing with this for years. And I think it's because we've reached a season where it's okay to talk about being stressed. It's okay to talk about anxiety. It's okay to share that you have panic attacks. For so many years, it was taboo to talk about those things, just like it was taboo to talk about counseling. Well, stress and anxiety, I call them twins. Stress and anxiety are two things that are really devastating and are really damaging to your physical being. And I want to share a scripture with you because I try. I don't maybe not always do it, but I try to open with a particular scripture because for me, scriptures help me as I'm on this journey of life. I remember the very first verse that I memorized was Psalm 119, verse 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I've never forgotten that. And as I have gotten older, it just takes on new meaning. Thy word is a lamp. What does a lamp do? It provides light for wherever you are or whatever you're doing. A lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. It just really resonates with me, as I said, as I continue this journey called life. All right, Luke 12 verses 25. Well, I was going to just say 25, but I think I'm gonna keep going. Okay, Luke 12. We're gonna start at verse 25. This is the NIV. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Let me ask you that again. That's a scripture, but I'm asking a question. Who of you, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and things will be given to you as well. And the next verse starts with, do not be afraid. As I was preparing for this show and I was looking for a scripture and I came across that one. And, sometimes you think, you say, if I knew then what I know now, I mean, I knew the word, I knew the Bible then, but I allowed myself, and I'll say I allowed myself to get so consumed with stress, so consumed with anxiety. I'm turning back the hands of time to my late 20s, my early 30s, where I developed ulcers from stress and anxiety and palpitations and these physical issues that I was having because of the stress that I was putting upon myself or allowing others to put upon myself. There was a time period where I internalized I internalized everything because I felt that I needed to maintain a certain demeanor, maintain a certain posture, um, and not necessarily show what's the word I want to use? A wide range. That's not the word, but it'll come to me. A wide range of emotions. It had to kind of be a sort of an even keel, never appearing to be out of control, never appearing to be, on the verge of some sort of breakdown or what have you. Just maintaining this posture and this stature of control, but I was screaming inside, y'all. I was screaming inside because all of these emotions, based on the circumstances at the time, if it was anger, suppressing that anger, if it was fear, suppressing that fear, if it was uncertainty, suppressing that uncertainty. There was this book that I read that was recommended to me. And the title of the book, I believe it was Buried Feelings Never Die. I am a witness that buried feelings never die, and I am a witness of the consequences of what happens with those buried feelings that never die. And there was a time period where I was angry, but I didn't want to appear to be angry. So I suppressed all of that anger, those angry feelings, just suppressed. They didn't go away. I just suppressed it. And on the surface, I had this calm, even demeanor, but underneath I was boiling over. Buried feelings never die. And then there was a time period where I was very anxious and fearful about things, very nervous about things. But again, didn't want to appear out of control or a bipolar expression, if you will, of emotions. So I suppressed the fear, suppressed the anxiety. Mind you, the anger's still over here, right? Then there's a period of time where, there was so much uncertainty that I didn't know what to do or which way to go or who to turn to or who to trust. And that confusion and that uncertainty and the anxiety that comes with that, suppressing that. So we've got this anger that's suppressed, we've got this fear that's suppressed, we've got this uncertainty that's suppressed. All of that mixed together creates depression as well, suppressing all of these things because I had to always put on a happy face. I had to always be in that space of, being under control and being the one that, people could come to with whatever it was that they had, or being the troubleshooter, being the problem solver, being the leader, being the one who will step up to the plate when no one else wants to step up to the plate and take on responsibility. All of that, buried feelings never die. But what happens to them? We're going to take a break. And when I come back on the other side of the break, I'm going to share a little bit about all of those buried feelings and what happened when they came to surface and give you some suggestions on how you can coexist or maybe even just get rid of the twins called stress and anxiety altogether. If you are just joining us, this is My Journey with Paula G. I'm your host, Paula G, and we're talking about the twins called stress and anxiety. We'll be back in a moment. Hey family, this is Paula G, and sometimes our negative mindset can hinder our progress. We have to unlock that negative mindset and create a new narrative in our minds so that we can move forward. And my Mindset Journey Masterclass can help you do just that. You can visit my website, paulagvoice.com, for more information. Embrace the journey. Welcome back to My Journey with Paula G, where we are juggling this journey. All of us are juggling this journey called life while we're walking in the gifts and the talents that God has given us. We appreciate you tuning in. I always say that time is precious. It's the one thing that you cannot get back. So for you to think in that robbery, to spend this time here with My Journey with Paula G is truly appreciated. Thank you so very much. Also, I want to give a shout out to our underwriters. We thank them so much for their support because they help us to put on this programming and they provide the means for which we can have this programming. So we're so very grateful for each one of them. And if you're looking to gain exposure for your business, your product, or your service, email jerryroycelive@gmail.com or paula@paulagvoice.com. Put underwriting opportunities in the subject line and we will be sure to follow up with you. So before the break, we were talking about the twins called stress and anxiety. And I was sharing with you a bit of my own challenges and my own journey over the years. And most of it was during my late 20s, early 30s into my 40s, I would say, where I internalized so many emotions, whether it was anger or fear or confusion, just depression, all of those things, just internalized them. And they began to really have an effect on my physical being to where I developed ulcers. Ulcers, y'all, because I allowed stress, I allowed anxiety to consume me, and I was burying all these feelings. Before the break, I was talking about a book that I had read, Buried Feelings Never Die. I was burying all these feelings. And the thing about that, the title of that book is Buried Feelings Never Die. They just kind of sit down there and fester, and they just kind of, it's sort of like, back in the day, some of you may remember, I know I'm dating myself, but that's okay, some of you remember that pressure cooker? Remember that pressure cooker? Or even well, maybe not a crock pot, a pressure cooker. And this thing, if it was too much pressure, the top would come off and whatever was in it would just kind of boil over the side. Okay, so maybe you never had a pressure cooker. Maybe you were boiling something on the stove, whether it was oatmeal or grits or whatever it was on the stove that you were porridge, whatever it was that you were boiling and or that you were preparing and it boiled over and it just kind of boiled, or sauce or something. It's the same thing. Those emotions, even though we press them down, they fester and they start boiling up and boiling up and boiling up, and they come to the surface and they manifest in one way, shape, form, fashion, or another. It could be ulcers. It could be a heart problem. It could even be your skin. Some people, when they stress, they break out in hives and all these different things. It could be headaches. It could be temper tantrums, rage. You're lashing out at people and you're lashing out at people about things that normally, you look out and like, what? I didn't even think that was such a big deal. They just kind of exploded and they went off because we're how can I talk today? Burrowing these feelings of stress and anxiety. And one good thing that I think we've reached a point in our society where it's okay to talk about stress. It's okay to talk about anxiety. It's okay to talk about self-care, to do those things so those buried feelings, well, first of all, we learn not to bury those feelings. We learn to deal with them where they are in whatever fashion we have to deal with them so those feelings don't fester. We express how we feel, we share how we feel, we're honest, we have dialogue with others, in regard to how we feel, so we can come to some sort of resolution to have peace with whatever that issue is, so we don't have to bury those feelings of fear and anger and all of those sorts of things. Can be a very detrimental thing, because when someone is angry and they're suppressing anger and they lash out and that anger comes out, it can come out in a manner that may cause them to make choices that will affect the rest of a person's life. So when we're dealing with all of these feelings that we have and we're dealing with all of these emotions that we really have to find a means of not burrowing our feelings. So I have three things that I want to share with you that hopefully will help you in this area. The first one is we have to identify the source. Oh, I have it handy. Oh, yes, I do. We have to identify the source of the stress and the source of the issues. And I don't know if you all remember, some of you who've been watching the show for a while, this is my book, My Journey to Lady Wisdom After Midnight. And in it, I talk a little bit about, you know, just that my journey of transforming from who I was to who I am today. And part of that was peeling back the layers to get to the source of some of these emotions, some of these feelings that I was having. And in the process of peeling back those layers, certain things that I had forgotten about, that I just had buried, were being exposed, and I had to deal with those things on that journey back to dealing with the core of the source of my anger or stress or whatever it was. It took a while to do that. It took a while to do that. Why do I have this suppressed anger, this suppressed fear, this suppressed anxiety, this suppressed confusion? You got to go back and do that work to kind of peel those layers back, because when we're suppressing them, it's just like with a wound. If you have a wound and it doesn't heal properly, it's going to heal, but it's not going to heal properly. It might be an ugly scar, it might be an ugly scab, whatever it is, and it might be painful moving forward because it didn't heal properly. And sometimes you got to rip that scab off. Yeah, I know that sounds nasty. You got to rip that scab off, clean it out, and make way for it to heal properly. That's a process. But that's, for me, that is something that I had to do, that I'm sharing with you, identifying the source of your stress. Where did that stress come from in the first place? And going back and dealing with that. And that may not be a pretty journey. It may not be a pretty process or experience, because the reason it's a buried feeling is because you didn't want to deal with it in the first place. But I'm telling you, I'm a living witness. It's worth going back and going through that. And yes, it may be hurtful and painful and conjure up all these other things, But if you go back and you deal with it as you move forward and heal again, you heal properly, you will heal in a healthy manner, and you will be released. You know, today, when I say today, I mean in this season of life, I feel so much lighter. And I'm not talking about my weight, because weight wise, I'm a little bit heavier than I was back then. But emotionally, feel so much lighter because I'm not suppressing the stuff like I used to suppress the stuff. So identify the source, peel back the layers, identify the source. Moving forward, implement things to counter your stress. Implement things to counter your stress. For me, it was learning how to express whatever those emotions were and getting those out and realize and being able to accept and be okay with whatever the response was that I got from whoever I was talking to, because they may or may not agree or feel it or whatever, but just being okay with the person's response. I learned how to say no. That was one of the hardest things, but I learned how to say no. And even better, learning how to say no, learning how to say no and dealing with, whatever the person may have been feeling or the judgment or, you know, um, as opposed to, well, I don't want them to think I'm this or I don't want them to think I'm that. Dealing with if they think it, they just think it. But the fact that I'm not holding it in or I'm not taking on things that I really can't take on because I've already taken on too much, but I don't want to say no. Oh Lord, I can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore. Being okay with saying no, having the power to say no. And yes, I shared this with you all before. I do not have a problem going to counseling. You got to find a good one. And that may mean that you might have to interview a few, you might have to sit with a few for a while till you find one that you're comfortable with. But really going to a counselor that you're comfortable with, that can help you properly peel back those layers, that can help you properly implement some strategies and some tools to help you deal with, the stressors and the anxiety and those things that come along. One of the things that was shared with me was to ask myself, what is in my best interest right now? What is in my best interest right now? I'm stressing about this, that, or the other. What is in my best interest? Maybe pull away from it. Maybe go work out. Maybe get a soothing cup of tea. Maybe go to bed. You know, maybe say no. What is in my best interest right now to relieve, not suppress, but relieve this stress, relieve this release. Let me use that word. Release this stress, release this anxiety, release this feeling, not suppress it, release it, deal with whatever the fallout is from it, and then move forward. I've had situations where I've had to say no to people about things that I've done before, but I'm no longer doing moving forward. And there was a time where I just couldn't handle their disappointment or frustration or anger or whatever their emotion was. I couldn't handle it, so I just say yes. Now it's like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, but Lord have mercy, I'm free because I'm not suppressing the feeling of I said yes when I really wanted to say no, and I've already got so much on my plate, and now I'm anxious because I got it even more. Oh, Jesus, I can't do that anymore, y'all. I'm telling you, I can't. And I encourage you not to. Now, I'm not saying, go off and act a fool in front of folk. I'm not saying that now. But I'm saying you reach a point where you've got to take care of yourself and your own inner being. So you can get to the point in life where you don't have ulcers, you don't have heart migraines. I didn't even tell you all about the migraines. Migraines, you don't have migraines. I look back and I think of, the days and the nights I was dealing with, you know, stomach issues and migraines, and how now in this season of my life I don't have to deal with any of that anymore. And it's just so freeing. It's just so freeing. So identify the source of this stress, implement tools to counter stressors as they come on, the anger, whatever those feelings are, to counter them so you don't internalize them. Get some help. Get some help. Get some help. Self help is so crucial nowadays. and I encourage you to do so. I hope that helped you because we've come to the end of our journey. I thank you all so much for joining me with this particular episode, The Twins, called Stress and Anxiety. We thank our underwriters so much for their underwriting support. Jerry Voice Live, our YouTube, our YouTube, our producer, Jerry Voice Live. Make sure you check out the Weekend Channel. I don't know where that came from. Make sure you check out the Weekend Channel. .tv as well. Stay connected with me across all social media platforms and all platforms, Google, Paula G Voice. And I want you to embrace your journey. And remember, the greatest conversation you will ever have is the one that takes place in between your ears. What are you speaking to yourself? Is God a part of that conversation? And are you listening to his still small voice? Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of My Journey with Paula G. Hey family, this is Paula G of My Journey with Paula G. When you're driving down the road, are you focused on the rearview mirror? Are you looking through the rearview mirror? Of course not. You're looking through the windshield in front of you. And that's what we have to remember in life. We cannot look at the rearview mirror. We cannot focus on the rearview mirror. We cannot focus on what has happened in the past. It is done. What we can focus on and what we have control of is what is ahead of us. Just like when we're driving, we're looking through the windshield, we can focus on what is ahead and not behind. And remember, greatest conversation you'll ever have is the one that takes place in between your ears. What are you speaking to yourself? Is God a part of that conversation? And are you listening to his still small voice? Embrace the journey and make sure you stay connected with My Journey with Paula G.